And we are back on the Chosen Life podcast. Our guest today again is one of our faves on the planet. It is Wayne Frazer of Doug Laurie Sports, the man with the memorabilia. I'm Jonathan A. Hacohen. Wayne, a couple of cool announcements for you before we start today's topic, because we're talking about Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback castoffs. So, first of all, my book, The Bible 3.0, behind me, The Six Commandments of the Chosen Life, is now in Indigo in Canada, and the audiobook just launched. It's quite the process to get a book published, as I've learned through my publisher, and to get the audiobook up and uploaded and going. And buddy, it's all out into the world now. It's worldwide. I'm feeling really good about it.
Congratulations. That's as somebody who is a former sports writer and short form writer, uh, I absolutely cannot even fathom the process of putting together an entire book. Um, there's a reason that journalists are journalists, right? Because short little sentences and short little articles, and even the long form stuff, other than investigative journalism, that's quite the accomplishment. So congratulations to you.
Thank you, my friend. When you knew me in my former life, I was a blogger, and so I understand the allure of the short stories, the half page, one page, and one topic and move on. Imagine I had about 10 topics in my head when I was going to write this book, and I ended up using all the topics. And 400 pages later, 22 chapters, everything in my head went into the book. So it's almost like an encyclopedia. It was a huge undertaking, 2 years worth of time as far as writing and editing, recording the audiobook. And the first thing people was asking me is, "Oh, so you're writing another one?" I'm like, "Let me breathe for a moment." And my second announcement is my son Jeremiah is now a car salesman. He is off into the world of sales, and he works for Direct Nissan in Mississauga. So a plug for them. And that's the car guy now. You need a new or used car, Jeremiah is your guy. So look on Instagram, Jeremiah at Direct.
It's funny. I've been offered a couple of sales jobs. I've done sales in the past, and I was offered jobs at car dealerships. And this is how long ago that was. I told one of the dealerships, I said, you guys are always saying when somebody comes in and they sit down in a used car, oh, you look great in that car or whatever. I said, what I would do is I would just keep a Polaroid land camera. That's how old this is. And I'd be like, yeah, you look fantastic in that car, but you know what? Don't take my word for it. Take a picture of them leaning out of the car, smiling and waving. And then instead of giving a business card, you write your name and the dealership and your phone number on the back of it, and you hand it to them and go, you know what? When you go look at other cars, just pull this back out of your pocket and see how good you look in this one. And if we can't close the deal today, come back and see me later on when you realize this is the one you want. Right. That was 1991. 92. I mean, you can still do the same thing with your phone, obviously, but it doesn't have quite the same impact of, you don't have a hard copy of it. Although you have those little Instaprint cameras now, right? So
I'm going to mention that to Jeremiah. That's a really good idea, actually. So we're going
yeah,
to steal that one if that's
you
okay.
can pass that along. I've mentioned to a couple other people who were in the car sales business, and they thought that's a pretty good hook. I don't know if it'd work now or not, but anything you can do to give somebody a tangible reminder that you were with them and that you had a good experience with them. And people like to look at themselves, especially if you show them in a good light, right? So if they're leaning out of that new Nissan, Xterra, waving at the camera, well, here you go. Here's you and that. Show your friends and see what they think, right? So
Listen, you and I love nothing more than to go back and watch our old episodes together and say, wow, we looked really good on that episode. Wow, I really liked what I had to say there, So I completely understand that allure. Now, before we get to today's topic, I asked you because there's always a piece of memorabilia that's started the show. So, did you go into the Montreal Canadiens locker room and take somebody's hockey bag? Is that what I'm looking at back there?
so what that is a friend of mine helped clean out the office of the former president of the Hamilton Bulldogs when he left the organization when they moved again, right? And so I got a bunch of equipment bags for the Bulldogs and stuff, and a bunch of skates and a few helmets, that sort of thing. But buried inside one of the goalie bags was that bag, and that bag is Mark Denis, who apparently was down for maybe a conditioning stint or something like that. But I believe it's his last NHL goalie bag, and it's got his name and number on it and everything else. It's really a neat piece, and I was actually pretty shocked to get it. So I haven't done anything with it yet. I'm probably going to post it this week or next week. It's going to be $250, nothing crazy. Not really any more than a normal goalie bag would cost you. But if you're a Canadiens fan or a Mark Denis fan or whatever, it's pretty neat.
Reach out to Wayne Frazier Jr. of Doug Laurie Sports, and he's got always something interesting cooking in the store, man. I love it. I love it. I love it. So today we talked about how excited we are about the Pittsburgh Steelers and their new revamped quarterback row. Now, if this was a game of Survivor, there were three people voted off the island recently, and each one took a raft to their own respective destination. When we talk about the Steelers, you got to start off with Kenny Pickett, obviously, and what happened here. And I'm going to take issue with something you said last week. Okay. I'm sorry,
Okay.
Wayne, but something ain't sitting right with me. So I got to talk to you about this. So, Kenny Pickett, you were talking about you can't have him with a drafted first round quarterback with Caleb Williams because he's the kind of the placeholder and he's kind of just going to be lingering a bit. Help me understand this. So he's going to his hometown. He's really excited about a new opportunity. Where is there opportunities in Philadelphia with a guy by the name of Jalen Hurts exactly? Where is the fit for Kenny Pickett, and how is this guy possibly going to be happy with his new team?
I'm not sure I can answer that question for you because I'm not 100% sure he will be. He seems thrilled. Um, and maybe what that maybe that makes you have questions about Kenny Pickett. That here's a guy who is willing to take a back seat to Jalen Hurts, clearly. Um, maybe Kenny Pickett's okay with that, and maybe that says something about his competitiveness. I don't know. I do know though that Jalen Hurts was not great last year. Jalen Hurts was look. Jalen Hurts is Jalen Hurts. I mean, he's an incredibly gifted athlete, but he, if you look at power rankings and quarterback rankings and stuff, Hurts fell into the late top 10, as low, I've seen him as low as 13 or 14 last year. And that team fell apart at the end of the season last year. Is there some discussion that maybe they want to change the direction of the offense here? I mean, you went out and you got Saquon Barkley too, right? And now you had DeAndre Swift and you let him go. You pick up Barkley, you know, are they worried about Hurts in the long term? Are they going to try to switch the offense to Hurts running less and them running the ball more? And then if you're going to do that, Pickett is a good guy to have as your backup. Because that's the thing that concerns me here is that I always like to think, and we didn't talk about this last week with the Russell Wilson and Field situation, right? Wilson is at a point in his career and with the Steelers that he's probably going to be a game management quarterback. That's not Fields. You want to turn Fields loose if you can. That was always the knock in Chicago, is that they didn't turn him loose enough. They kept trying to govern him in, right? Well, are you going to try to dial Hurts back? And that's why you think Pickett is a good fit. Or if you keep the same offense, if Hurts goes down, Pickett's not that guy. That's not his game, really, right? So you're going to now, I really like to try to make the quarterback tailored somewhat, your backup to be tailored to the offense. It makes me wonder, are they going to try to go to a more run first offense that maybe has more consistency, that doesn't rely so much just on Jalen Hurts' legs and his ability to make plays? I don't, I don't really, I get signing Kenny Pickett. I mean, I get signing a first round draft pick and bringing him in to be your backup. I just think maybe it creates more problems than you're going to solve. And I don't necessarily know that it's a particularly good fit.
Are Jalen Hurts and Justin Fields bottom line running backs that want to be quarterbacks? Should these gentlemen not just be running backs and move on with their lives? Because I can tell you, when I saw Fields against the Falcons, he was running all day long. It was a beautiful, beautiful thing. But I feel like these two are just trapped running backs that they want to say they're quarterbacks. So if you were to take Jalen Hurts, put him as a running back, put Pickett as your quarterback, would that work?
I suppose maybe, but my issue with that is they said the same thing about Michael Vick. They said the same thing about Randall Cunningham. They said the same thing. Who am I? There's a third example of this here that I'm missing. Um, but Michael Vick clearly could have been a tight end. He could have been a running back or whatever. I think the when you ask that question, what you have to do is you have to flip it around and say, okay, Jalen Hurts could probably be a pretty amazing running back. Justin Fields could probably be a pretty amazing running back. Is there a could you do the same thing with running backs, and would they have the same arm strength that Jalen Hurts or Justin Fields do? And I think that's the issue, is that you have to make some sort of judgment at some point as to whether or not Jalen Hurts is more of a positive for your team just using his legs, right? Or is he gifted enough as a quarterback? And I think we've seen that he is gifted enough as a quarterback that he's your guy until the point that he throws a lot of picks or he's not hitting the open receiver. We talked about that last week, right? Not doing the checkdowns and stuff like that. If you get to a point where you feel like, you know what, we have a good offensive line, we have good receivers, we now have Saquon Barkley, we don't need a guy running around like crazy. We need a guy who's going to stay in the pocket and hit the receivers. Now, my question is that Kenny Pickett? I don't know. I don't know if it's Kenny Pickett, but it's worth taking a shot on it, right? I really believe that. The only issue I have with them bringing Pickett in is he going to be a bit of a mope if he doesn't get what he wants, right? And from all the indications we've seen of Pickett talking about being in Philadelphia, I guess not.
Wayne, in a league that is worth so much money and at a premium position that is your most important position, that gets paid as the most important position, why is it that a highly touted former first round draft pick, when they don't pan out perfectly and are still pretty good, they can pick them up for nothing? Like you think about, Trey Lance, think about Justin Field, nothing about Kenny Pickett. What is with the NFL that you don't pay running backs and you don't have to pay very much in trade capital to get quarterbacks? Why aren't these guys worth more on the trade market?
Who's the last guy that switched teams as a quarterback that was a high draft pick and succeeded? Can you name one off the top of your head?
Not a highly
There's
touted
your
one.
there's your answer. I think that for quarterbacks, and I'm not gonna claim to have had the original thought on this. Um, Again, I mentioned Merrill Hodge in the last, but
Mhm.
actually I heard this was a discussion that he was having with Colin Cowherd, and I don't like Colin Cowherd really at all, but he does have good guests on. Um, it's very rare that somebody who's a high drafted quarterback it doesn't succeed where he was and then goes somewhere else and turns out to be really really good. And I think that has to do with how Merrill Hodge looks at quarterbacks coming out of college. The two key things are accuracy and processing ability, right? You can't teach processing ability in the grander scheme of things. People can get quicker at how quickly they process, but you kind of either have that or you don't to a certain extent, right? And then accuracy. Guys in college who have really good accuracy are going to have really good accuracy in the pros, or at least they're going to have a better shot at it. But guys with bad accuracy in college, they likely are not getting any better. And so when you draft these guys and you say, okay, CJ Stroud is an example that we talked about last week. CJ Stroud coming out of college, there was no question about any of this stuff. He was a high processor. His accuracy was off the charts. He was a good leader. He was a guy that you really didn't have, like, why Bryce Young went in front of him. I still don't really understand it. But, and plus Bryce Young is about what, 4'8". So you've got to deal with all that stuff too, right? When you take these other guys and pretty quickly, either you've taken a guy that you thought you could, I can improve his footwork, I can do this, that, we can teach him, and it turns out you can't, or it just turns out that he just cannot translate that stuff and you just made a mistake, right? Kenny Pickett has not looked like a guy who is going to be a franchise quarterback. He looks like a guy who might be serviceable, right? I don't think he's going to be ever going to be a great starter. Was there ever any thought that he was going to be a franchise quarterback? I don't think that's why the Steelers drafted him, though. I think the Steelers, in their scheme of things, is we're going to run the ball first, we're going to play defense and whatever else. And Pickett wasn't even capable of doing that. So now you're going to send him somewhere else and he's going to be better? Like of the guys who are changing teams here, I thought about that last night when I was looking at the agenda, and I thought, okay, who is the last guy who switched teams who was a high end like draft pick? That's why guys like Brock Purdy succeed. Because at the back end of a draft, you can take a guy like Brady, you can take a guy like Purdy, you can take a guy, an undrafted guy, right? And you can basically say, well, he doesn't have the greatest arm strength or the greatest mobility or whatever else. But if you're using the measurements of accuracy and processing ability, well, at the very worst, this guy is going to be serviceable. And maybe he surprises us. And so that's the way it works. I mean, a guy like Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant, but guess what? He's accurate. He processes well. He takes what the team gives him. People knock him for that. They're like, oh, he just dumps the ball off all the time. Well, first off, that's not accurate. He doesn't dump the ball off all the time. His yards per attempt are quite good. And second, that's what wins you games in the NFL. Winning games in the NFL is about moving the ball 5 to 10 yards every time. That guy, Brady, Purdy, I don't give a crap who it is, that unexciting guy that you think is kind of boring, that gets you to 2nd and 4 on the slant, boom, that's the guy you want. So I don't know who's out there, that falls into that category. And I think that's what it is. I think that it happens faster for high draft quarterbacks that really quickly, plus we're also in the age of, I think Dan Patrick said this, or maybe Cowherd. Quarterbacks now, like if the Bears draft Caleb Williams, he's got till Thanksgiving of next year. And that's it. And if he's not successful by then, if they think, well, he's not our guy, out he goes. Because it's a rookie quarterback. It's a rookie contract. You just get rid of him and go get somebody else as a rookie quarterback, right? Until you hit.
It makes me think how the Cardinals saw Kyler Murray and said, this is our franchise, this is our future, because I could tell you if he got released and you could have him at a $1.2 million league minimum, I don't think all the teams are going to line up for him per se. And that processing part, he seems like he has an issue with that as well. Jalen Hurts gets hurt, so to speak, and Pickett is now your starter. Pickett's injury track record is not great either.
No.
So that at the end of and Philly fans, as far as I know, are not that forgiving. I'm going to be seeing them at WrestleMania this year and partying it up in Philadelphia. So if Pickett opens his mouth once and says anything to the media that's not taken very well, and if he gets put in there and he does not perform instantly, he's going to get the first train out of town. So I agree with you. I think out of the 3 that left Pittsburgh, he's going to have the hardest time with it, and I don't see this ending well for him, unfortunately. A guy who I do see ending very well, I think this was a no-brainer. I think this would have been a better situation for Pickett, in fact. So Mason Rudolph is off to the Titans. He gets 1 year, $3.62 million. He's worth double the amount that Russell Wilson is. With Levi there, I think that Rudolph could be the starter. He's a guy that was highly touted. I think it was a 2nd round pick originally for the Steelers, if I'm not mistaken. He was a guy who good size, looks good on posters. And when he got put in there, I think was pretty steady. Great placeholder. I like this signing for the Titans.
I don't hate the signing, but I also think that, that Will Levis is going to be a very good quarterback. He was my guy out of the draft last year. He was the guy outside of CJ Stroud. When people said, okay, well, there's Richardson and there's Bryce Young and there's these other guys, I like Will Levis the best because I think he has the strongest arm. He seems to process well, even though he wants to throw the ball downfield, right? I think Rudolph's going to go there and he's going to be an okay backup. I don't think he's going to get, unless Levis gets hurt, I don't think he's going to get the chance to be the starter. Is he a solid guy to bring in, you know, basically under the way that the Titans kind of run things anyway? Yeah, I think that's not a bad pickup. But I don't think Rudolph is going to get much of a chance there. I think they were pretty impressed with what Levis did last year.
Mhm.
And I think that he's going to get every opportunity this year to kind of take the ball and run with it, although that's not what he does. Um, I think he's going to get every opportunity to show that he deserves to be the guy. Tennessee is probably not going to be great this year, although, you know, you add Calvin Ridley, and Ridley was good last year for being off for having been off the field for a year or two. You add him to DeAndre Hopkins, and you bring in Tony Pollard and put him with Ty J. Spears. All of a sudden, I this team is a hell of a lot better than it was offensively, right? Last year, and defensively they should be pretty good. So I don't know. I mean, I think the one chance that Rudolph has is they come out of the gate and they're 3-1, and it's not because of their quarterback play. It's because of Tony Pollard and Ty J. Spears and their defense. And now they have to make a decision. Levis isn't playing great. Everybody else is. And we have Mason Rudolph. And Mason Rudolph is more of a game management type guy. Are we better off playing that guy than we and putting Levis back on the bench? I don't see that happening. I think that they really feel like they got something good in Levis, and I think he's going to be their quarterback for a long time. I don't I don't hate the signing. I just don't think for Rudolph he's going to have a chance to step in there outside of injuries and really show anything.
And I don't think Will appreciate me calling him Levi's, but I see that name. I always think Levi's jeans. So Levis, Levi's, whatever, man. But I will say this much. The year is finished in Tennessee. Whether, Rudolph even plays a snap, depending on injuries, like you said, you're not going to hear anything about him. Like that's not going to be anything negative. He's just going to be a good teammate, probably just sit there, and collect his paycheck. You have to have a backup. I mean, we've learned with the 49ers, you get two, three quarterbacks out during the playoffs. So you can never have too many backups be ready to go. Rudolph is used to this role. He's been the backup spot starter. So, look, the worst case scenario is that Levis does very, very well for the Titans all year. Rudolph is just there to back up and away we go. I think that it'll work out still better for him than Pickett, but time will tell. The guy who is most happy out of all these teams and these players is Mitch Trubinski. So he's back in Buffalo now, after making 14 mil in Pittsburgh over a couple of years. Now he got the most money out of all these three guys, so he's getting 5.25 over two. Josh Allen's backup. Everybody's excited to have him back. He's excited to be back. What was your reaction to Mitch going back to Buffalo?
Um, it's a good fit for Trubisky. I again, I'm still not 100% sold that Trubisky could not have been a good starter in this league. I think Chicago does that to you. Unfortunately, is it just makes it where it sort of screws up your career path um, as a quarterback, right? Uh, it's a good fit. Allen plays most of the time, and Trubisky is a more than capable backup. He's a good guy in the locker room by all accounts. Um, and he doesn't mind the cold weather. It's not going to bother him, But if you're starting Mitch Trubisky at this point, there's an issue, right? And the issue is that Josh Allen is hurt. But I don't have any issue with the signing. 5 million seems a little strong,
But
but
for two
you're
years, for 2 years.
yeah, but you're paying for good quality backup, somebody who's been there, somebody who has been a starter and was not as again, not as bad as Chicago made him look, right? Trubisky in small doses was very good, but just the consistency issue, right? So I I don't mind the signing. I'm happy for Trubisky. I don't know about the Bills going forward this year. I don't think they're better than they were last year. I don't think they've improved at all, and I just don't know what makes them better than Miami or whoever, Kansas City or whoever you're going to look at here. And it boils down again to when you get to the playoffs, can you count on Josh Allen to play 3 or 4 solid games for you in a row where there's not some mistakes that cost you games?
And I've watched enough Buffalo Bills games to tell you, I think that Josh Allen has hit his ceiling. This is as good as it's getting. And you know what? It's not bad. It's not bad. If we had a perfect team around him,
Yeah.
maybe they just need a dome stadium. Maybe it's that cold Buffalo weather that's getting to him. Maybe if they were playing out of Miami, it'd be better for him. I don't know. But ultimately, we know Trubinsky is going to be 2 years back in Buffalo. If you were going to get to crystal ball, Pickett, Rudolph, are they going to last more than 1 year in their respective new cities?
I think Rudolph has the possibility to stick around if he's willing to stick around, if he's willing to back up Levis. I think he could stay there. But it basically comes down to at what point in the season. The other possibility of signing somebody like Rudolph too is that, say that the Vikings, they're probably going to draft a quarterback, but whoever they draft, I hope they're not going to immediately throw him in to the fire, right? They're going to let Sam Darnold play. Darnold will be fine there. In fact, I think he's going to have an excellent season. I don't think he's really much of a step back from Kirk Cousins, especially with having Justin Jefferson there and all that sort of stuff, Hawkinson coming back and all that sort of thing. Um, but say that Minnesota gets off to a 5-2 start, and then Darnold gets hurt, and they've drafted Nix, let's say, right? And Nix is clearly not ready to start. Well, now what do you do? Well, Joshua Dobbs went back to the 49ers, which is interesting. Um, they're going to have to go acquire a quarterback. I think that, and this doesn't happen that often, and I don't know why it doesn't happen that often. When a quarterback, a first stringer, when your starter gets hurt and you immediately turn to your second string guy, you want to give him a chance. But if you're the Vikings, are you not going to turn to Tennessee and go, hey, we need a quarterback. We'll give you a third next year for Rudolph right now. It's an asset management thing too, right? And it depends on where the Titans are in that year or whatever. Same thing goes with Trubisky. Same thing goes with somebody like Kenny Pickett. I mean,
Trey Lance
yeah,
for him.
well, I mean, look, we need to talk about the Cowboys at some near point. I don't know if you saw the Skip Bayless tweet,
I didn't see
which
it though.
was a forward tweet. Rich Eisen did a great bit on it the other night. After the first couple of days of free agency, Skip Bayless's tweet was all in my ass, right? And Rich Eisen retweeted it with this is why the comma is so important. Because if you take the comma out of Skip Bayless' tweet, it reads completely differently, right? And they did a whole bit about it, but he's not wrong. You look at that team now, and what is it? Like Rico Dowdle is the best running back they have in their stable now. You know, they've he says he's going to stand pat. That's what Jerry Jones is going to do for a year. On what? You let a whole bunch of guys walk away from the team and you didn't really resign anybody else. So, I mean, there's another situation where, at least in that situation, I don't honestly believe necessarily that Trey Lance isn't the better quarterback between Prescott and Lance right now,
But as
especially for cost.
But as long as your owner is the GM, president, head coach doing every single job and puts these mannequins in place and he tells them what to do. I don't know. At some point, I think you got to get the right people in place and actually let them do their jobs, you know. And this is where obviously, you know, he's coaching the team. He's telling the coach what place to run it looks like. So they're another story for another day. And we're out of time today, Wayne, because we got to jump into next week and we got to look at Super Bowl predictions, one of our favorite activities. So stay tuned. That's Wayne Frazier of Doug Laurie Sports, Jonathan A. Cohen. This is the Chosen Life Podcast.